I don't want to brag, but I'm going to. If there was a best vagina in the universe contest, I would win. And I'm not saying that your vagina is bad. I'm just saying that mine is really, really good. And it takes a lot for me to say that now because I've spent 50 years of my life feeling like there was something wrong with every part of me, like which parts were too fat and which parts were too ugly and which parts had too much hair. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, why am I losing so much hair? And it's finally time for me to say that I'm okay. But if we're going to talk about my vagina, it's amazing. When I was a preteen, my mother gave me a book called Growing Up and Liking It. It was about boobies and periods. So even though the uterus is actually the culprit of all the excess bleeding years, the vagina is kind of the fall guy, when in fact she's just like the escape route. So there were those years when my vagina was simply the bleeding place, the place that would not allow me to swim or wear those white shorts. And as I advanced into high school, I got a better understanding of my body. It was like there are uterus and ovaries, there's a cervix, there's a vagina, there's a vulva. And a book in health class said, get a mirror and inspect my nether regions. Well, I looked, and it's just like vulva. It's just vulva, vulva, vulva. You can't see your vagina. It stays hidden. But, you know, I like that. She's like the weather. When she feels sunny, I feel sunny. When she feels sad, I feel sad. And sometimes there's a warning, and they'll call it like your gut feeling, or they'll say there's something in the pit of your stomach, but it's your vagina whispering to you, being that sixth sense. And I have trusted and cared for her, even though she remains a mystery. And there was a point in time when I learned that you could control or reduce the pain of your menstrual cramps by doing Kegel exercises. So I basically trained for the Kegel Olympics. I wanted those muscles to be strong. I wanted to be pain-free, and I didn't really think about the future, which was like sex and babies. And, you know, maybe one day if you think about sex, your partner may really appreciate those Kegels. But the month before my wedding, my mother handed me another book. See, she's both like conservative and progressive at the same time, and this book was called The Act of Marriage. And it explained every act. I mean, like everything. This was like before Pornhub. It just said all the things. And every possibilities. And that book was spicy. It encouraged autonomy and pleasure and consent. And I did say my mother gave this to me. And I was really embarrassed, more embarrassed than when I was 11 and she gave me the period book. But the funny thing is, when my mother handed me this book, she gave me 3 pieces of marriage advice. And it went like this. There should be sex. It should be good. There should be lots of it. And she just walked away. So feel free to take a moment and reflect on your first sex talk with your mom, and maybe it's your one and only sex talk with your mother. And 2 of my daughters are in the back there, and they're like, wait, what did Nana say? Yeah, Nana said that. And my only hope is that if there is a Miss Vagina Universe pageant, they will ask me a question that allows me to tell that story. But then I'm also followed by this crushing realization that my mom and dad read that book. So anyway, the advice is good, but it's also sort of flawed, because if you're a childbearing person and you're interested in childbearing and there is sex and it is good and there is lots of it, there may be children. So that's like an important detail she kind of left out. I have 4 kids. I love them, and none of them ever passed through my vagina. There are repercussions of too many Kegels. It's like Fort Knox down there. Like, yeah. And apparently I have a really long cervix, which if you know what that is, woo. And I know because I had a hysterectomy 10 years ago, and my doctor said, of all my patients, you're the one I know you really want to see the photos. And I was like, yeah, I do want to see the photos. And so in my nightstand, I have a picture of my uterus and my cervix and my fallopian tubes. And they did great work for me. I thank them. But I did wonder what was going to happen to my vagina during this hysterectomy. Like, just pause and think, like, what happens to your vagina? And so here's what my doctor said. She said, your vagina is like a tube. Think of leg warmers. Well, now we've got to sew up one end and turn it into a sock. You can still have sex and you'll still need pelvic exams, but now your vagina is a sock. She is a doctor, like medically trained, and she called my vagina a sock. I like to think of it differently. So if I were a doctor, I'd be like, my vagina used to be a highway, maybe like a nice interstate road, but now it's a cul-de-sac. All it's missing is a basketball hoop and a block party. When my kids were small, I used to put them in turtlenecks, and I love a turtleneck, but my kids did not, still to this day. They resisted the pulling and the pushing and the darkness, and sometimes in my frustration, I would blame it on my vagina. I would say, if you had had a vaginal birth, getting in and out of this turtleneck would be easy. And think about it. I blamed their distrust of turtlenecks on the fact that they were C-section babies. And there was a sad time, where I thought I was defective and my vagina had somehow failed me, but I don't feel that way anymore. My vagina is strong, it is hidden and magical and funny, and even if I can't see it with a mirror, I love my vagina. It used to be tied to pain and pleasure, and then one day recently I learned that it's also tied to my breathing. Like, if you take a deep breath, all the muscles in your pelvis contract when you breathe in and when you breathe out. And no one ever really thinks about that. They just think about blood and sex and babies, but not our breath. And so I love that my vagina is tied to my breathing. And so my vagina breathes, it grabs, it hides, it accepts love, and it loves solitude. And I have my own advice for you all tonight, which is be kind to your vagina and the vaginas around you. And remember, you made your great escape through a vagina, or you went the way of Caesar. And let your vagina monologue